I need you to understand the weight of what I'm about to tell you. This isn't a ghost story for amusement or an embellished family tale. What happened to me at my aunt's farmhouse, and what still happens, felt less like a haunting and more like an illness. It spreads through silence, memory, and attention. By writing this, I've given it a shape. I fear it is already listening. It began the night I opened the door. The house smelled of rot and cold stone. I tried to call it neglect, but the silence was wrong. City silence is fractured by traffic. Forest silence hums with insects. This silence was watchful, like lungs holding breath. On the first day I cleaned, dust lay in dunes across tabletops, wallpaper peeled in ribbons, and mold had bloomed in corners like bruises. I swept, packed boxes, and tried to make progress. But when I turned my head, the grandfather clock's glass showed motion that wasn't in the room. At first I blamed my eyes. The reflection lagged behind me, pausing before copying my movement as if deciding whether to follow. By the second day, it grew bolder. While scrubbing a black stain in the sink, an odor of rust at the edge, I heard slow, dragging footsteps above. They moved a minute, then stopped. I called, no answer. The upper floor was empty. Closed drawers, faded upholstery. Still, the air held the sense of someone who had just left the room. That night, I could not sleep. Every creak felt deliberate, every shadow rehearsed. I left lamps on and the television muttering, noise as a thin shield. Morning brought small betrayals. A calendar flipped to a day I hadn't chosen. A photo shifted on the mantle, a spoon face down where I'd set it face up. Alone, each detail could be dismissed. Together they formed a pattern. The house was learning how to be inhabited again, arranging itself around a presence that watched and adapted. I stopped insisting on coincidence. I began to speak aloud, naming rooms and objects as though language could reclaim them. Sometimes I caught edges, a figure's outline in glass, a shadow that refused to line up with me. It never advanced. It waited, attentive to how I reacted, changing with my attention. I left after 4 days with boxes and a ledger of disturbances, but the feeling followed. When night settles into that peculiar stillness, my mind returns to the sink and the slow drag of unseen heels, the cling of the clock's reflection. Attention can be contagious. Memory can open a door. I tell you this not to conjure thrills, but to name what I experience. Names fortify, but listen too closely and you give it a foothold. Keep light and sound. If something watches, do not stare into the dark. Speak, turn a page, say a room's name aloud. Ordinary acts are the best defenses against whatever waits in the silence. Stay quiet, but keep speaking. Let ordinary life continue tonight. Gathering what courage I had, I climbed the stairs calling out, though my voice cracked on the second word. The upstairs hall was empty, but a door I knew I had left open was shut tight. I remember my hand trembling as I twisted the knob. Inside was nothing unusual, just my aunt's sewing room, filled with broken spools, faded fabric, a dressmaker's dummy slumped in the corner. But the mirror on the wall was different. Its surface was cloudy, but I could make out a figure behind me, over my shoulder. I spun around. No one. Yet when I looked back, the reflection hadn't caught up. It lingered, half a second too long, its face stretched where mine should have been. The eyes, hollow, like sockets burned black into the glass. That night I barricaded myself in the guest bedroom. I told myself I'd finish packing tomorrow and leave, but sleep would not come. Hours passed, and then came the scratching. Faint at first, as though nails dragged lightly along wood. I sat up in bed, straining my ears. The sound traveled along the baseboards, up the doorframe, higher and higher until it scraped at the top edge of the door. Then it stopped. I didn't breathe. And into that void of silence, a whisper seeped through. Look! I didn't. I stayed rigid, staring at the ceiling until dawn bled gray through the curtains. When I finally opened the door, the hallway smelled faintly of soil, damp and fresh, as if earth had been disturbed. On the third day, I made the mistake of reading her journals. She had written about the hollow-eyed watcher. Her words were frantic, inconsistent, often scratched out and rewritten. She claimed it could only move when noticed, that each glance, each acknowledgement gave it permission to step closer. She described nights where it stood at her window, its face pressed against the glass though the room was on the second floor. Mornings where she'd find soil on the stairs, though every door was locked. She wrote, "It has no patience, only hunger." That afternoon, while boxing up dishes, I saw it more clearly than ever. In the dining room cabinet was a panel of glass. I bent to lift a plate, and there, beyond my own reflection, stood something impossibly tall, its head tilted as though it studied me with the fascination of a child staring at an insect. The eyes were black pits, sunken so deep it seemed the skull caved inward. Its mouth was crooked, a gash too wide, teeth irregular, shining faintly like shards of wet stone. I dropped the plate. It shattered. The reflection flickered, gone. But the air remained heavy, charged with something like anticipation, as if it had taken one step closer. That night was the worst. I tried to sleep on the couch downstairs, lights blazing in every room. Sometime past midnight, the bulbs began to flicker. The television, which wasn't even plugged in, crackled to life with static. And through the static came a sound. Not words exactly, but the rhythm of breathing. Long, slow, deliberate. I turned in my blanket and saw, in the reflection of the darkened window, a hand press against the glass. Not my hand. Too long, too thin. The fingers splayed wide, nails sharp as splinters. And the face followed, those hollow eyes blooming out of the dark. I screamed. By the time I turned on every lamp, it was gone. But the window pane was smeared with something damp, oily, smelling faintly of iron. That was enough. The next morning, I packed my car and fled. I didn't care about the rest of the house, about my aunt's possessions, about anything except escape. For a few hours, as the farmhouse shrank in the rearview mirror, I allowed myself to believe I'd left it behind. But deep down, I knew. Her journals had warned me. It follows. Now I'm home. Safe, I thought. But safety doesn't exist when something no longer belongs to a place. It belongs to you. The first night back, I avoided mirrors and left the lamps burning. I filled the rooms with television noise and music. Anything to drown the silence that felt like attention. At 2 in the morning, I brushed my teeth and leaned over the sink. The faucet was still, but the water in the basin rippled, slow and deliberate, like breath on porcelain. A metallic voice threaded through the pipes and said one word. "Look." I tried rational explanations, old pipes, settling, but the sound carried intention. The next night, the full-length mirror I kept against the wardrobe had been turned outward, angled to face the bed. I remembered leaving it flat against the wall. Now it tilted as if someone had positioned it to watch. In its glass, a shape stood in the corner, too tall to be my silhouette, a patient absence that ate the light. It did not move. Its stillness felt violent, like a thing holding its weight back. After that, I stopped trying to sleep. I walked the house at midnight with a mug of coffee, tapping glass with a spoon to prove it solid. Mirrors looked too deep. Picture frames held shadows that thickened the light. The television never quite lost a corner of black. Every reflective surface had a second surface beneath it, one that waited and watched. Tonight, as I write this, the air is thin and colder where it stands. My phone screen is a black mirror. Chrome and glass carry an extra depth, a lip of darkness curling at the edges of my outline. My shadow leans wrong, folding at angles no light should allow. My breath fogs, though the room is warm. There is a narrow trail behind me where warmth drains away, and the back of my neck rises under an invisible touch. I have pictured the moment I turn. In some versions, I scream. In others, I run, and the door will not open. In the worst, I force myself to look, and the thing fills the room with a single, final frame. Empty hollows like sockets where eyes should be. A mouth of suggestion, a silhouette that swallows memory. I have thought of resistances, reciting names, pinching skin. But the body betrays in small ways. A tilt of the head, the slow surrender of waking, the curiosity that edges the eye. The cruelty is its patience. It does not break in with noise. It arranges itself in small betrayals. A mirror tilted, a faucet surface that moves, a photograph angled to point into nothing. It asks only that you look. That one act of attention is its transaction. Sometimes I run tests. I stand in doorways and watch light fall. I switch one bulb off, then another, to see if darkness stacks. I call my name into the kitchen and wait. There is an answer now, but not a reply. The rearrangement of small things. An ornament angled that was straight. A photograph whose eyes no longer face you. The wedge of cold that slices behind your shoulder. Once I left my phone face down on the table. When I flipped it, the screen showed a shallow reflection with another layer beneath in breath. I cling to stories, rules from childhood about thresholds and names to hold me steady. I leave hallway lights on and speak aloud to prove to the floorboards that I am human. I let the television murmur even when I am not watching, because ordinary sound feels like a net. Rituals are small shields, and I wrap myself in them. There is another danger. By speaking of it, I have made space for you to imagine it, and imagination is a kind of invitation. If you picture the shadow behind your phone screen, if you see that corner of the room filled, you have given it a foothold equal to the one I described. Name it, and you help it to exist. So take this as a plea. When your house folds into night and reflections deepen, do not give your face to the glass. Keep lights burning. Keep a radio or a show on. Let mundane noise fill the room like a wall. If you feel a cold press at your shoulder, do not turn. Step away. Keep the ordinary between you and the dark. I have not turned yet. My hands shake as I write. The shadow that once followed my feet is jagged now, as if cut by some unseen blade. And something about the way it waits tells me it knows how to count. If I turn, I will see the hollows. If I turn, those hollows may be the last frame I am given. Do not look. Keep talking. Keep the lights on. Keep the ordinary, and let ordinary be enough tonight. And when you do, it will know your name.